Hi everyone, thanks for coming. It's good to see such a big crowd for this film. My name is Jamie Meyer-Schlenk. I'm the president of Women in Film Cincinnati. Thank you. We are so excited to be a part of the first time this film has shown in Cincinnati. So it sounds like my next question was going to be how many of you have heard of Women in Film? So it sounds like a few of you have. We are a nonprofit, member-based organization here. We've been around for about 8 years. We do a lot of screenings, workshops, guest speakers. We have a holiday party that's getting bigger and bigger every year. If you haven't heard of us, we've got a sign up for a mailing list up there with some stickers that I have about 5,000 stickers. Please take some stickers. And also on social media is the best way to see what we're doing. And we have events every other month. The next thing we're going to do is if you're interested in maybe being a volunteer with us, we're going to have a meeting coming up for just people that want to be more involved. So anyway, and then to those of you who are members, thank you very much. We're really excited to show this film, and a big part of that is we have Alexis Marsh here with us, who is the composer.
Thank you so much for coming. I see so many friends and family in the audience. I really appreciate you coming out. I feel like I've been talking about film scoring for years, and I'm so pleased that you're able to see this. I'll talk more about the movie afterwards. We're going to do a little bit of a Q&A where we talk about how the film was made and how the score was made. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, wow, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I want to talk about this film, but before we even get started, I want to tell the audience a little bit more about you, because this woman is a powerhouse. Alexis Marsh is an award-winning composer, songwriter, and music producer. She's worked on 6 seasons of TNT's Animal Kingdom. She worked on Next Gen on Netflix. She's worked on Better Things, Lucifer, Jessica Jones, The Good Doctor, as well as an HBO documentary called Phoenix Rising. Her work has been heard at Sundance, South by Southwest, Tribeca, and the list goes on and on. She's also she is part of besides composing for film, she's part of a band that's putting out albums. And a lot of great collaboration. As an editor, I know how transformative and important music is in a film, so I am super excited to talk to you today about this. So yeah, that was really great. Let's just start with the basics. Like, how did you become involved with this particular project, and what was your process like?
So I went to USC in Los Angeles in 2009, and through going to a film school, you meet so many filmmakers, and Morrisa wasn't even a filmmaker at USC. She was an artist in Los Angeles, but she went to Columbia with some other filmmakers that ended up doing their graduate degree at USC. And so we just met through screenings and different parties. It really was like, I remember our professors saying, your network is the thing. Like, you'll get an education here a little bit, but really you're gonna learn most of it after. And the people you are sitting beside is the main thing. And it seems so impossible at the time, because it's just, networking is a miracle of, like, you never think someone's gonna ask you to do something, like you're a stranger, you don't have any experience, whatever. But it really was just meeting her a couple times over and over and over again. And I remember seeing her work and feeling like I really wanted to work with her. And I think at the time, I was with a writing partner, Sam Jones, who was also credited on the film. We were just sending folders of music to anyone who had anything to do with film. Just, you can have it for free. If you want original music, we'll score it for free. Like, whatever you want. We're so hungry for that kind of work. And so she started playing around with a short film. And she also, when we went to her studio, always had Criterion films. She would have it on a big projector, just like, I think 12 hours a day she was watching whatever was on Criterion and making this weird art. And so we just kept in touch with her, knowing that we wanted to be ready whenever she called. And so thankfully she called us about a short film. And I think the secret was that, like, no one else would do it cheaper. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't like we had this great, I don't know, folder of material. It was just, you could not beat the price. And maybe she would tell you otherwise, but I think that was the key. But then in 2020, over COVID, and we had heard about this. She had sort of said, I think in 2017, she started working on this because her husband, who is the creepy guy at the gas station,
he's not creepy.
It was like a little bit. Well, I guess he was just a man. He was just a man at a gas station.
He played creepy.
We scored him to be creepy. But he has this really interesting job where he walks around Texas and South Dakota looking for dinosaur bones. And then we'll find something that looks like a dinosaur bone and do a dig and then put it together and sell it to Jeff Bezos. Just like an insane job. And so she married him and then went to Texas and went to South Dakota, but Morrisa just goes, wherever she goes, will meet people like Dale, the guy at the gas station, or Lainey. I think the story with that was that she was getting her hair cut and the hairdresser was talking about Lainey, and Morrisa was like, can I meet this person? And then just started shooting and shot all this sort of like footage that she didn't know what to do with, and then eventually it pieced together into a movie. And she would say, we're getting close on the edits and whatever, so that we can edit to it. And we would just send her tracks of stuff. And and then over lockdown, she said she had it ready and wanted a string orchestra, and somehow had gathered like funders and connected with Richard Linklater's independent film in Austin, and they had like a 4-hour cut of this movie or something, and that program helped her edit it down. And then just as she kept moving, people saw the potential of the movie, signed on, gave her money. She was just like, she is a powerhouse. Yeah. So that's it. That was how I got to the film, and then how we worked on it was basically like very rough edits where it was not clear what the movie was about or what kind of music suits Tana. I mean, I feel like the surprising thing about this movie is that you think it's going one way and never goes there. You think there's going to be drama or a story of some kind, and it's just like pure observation. And so we would write these different scenes. Sam would be working in Los Angeles, I would be working in Cincinnati, and we would just split up the scenes. He would take some, I would take some, and we would write and send her something, and we kind of wouldn't hear from her, and then she'd send us a new cut, and some of those things were in totally different places than we had originally scored it. But they were better. I mean, it was just like, I feel like the experience that I've had is that like, whatever the director says is going to work eventually. Like, I think maybe when you're younger, there's tension about like, I wrote it for this scene, it's supposed to do this thing, and then the more you work with people that take your idea and like put it where it's supposed to go, you start to sort of trust and understand how much vision a director has, and how if you go along with it, it ultimately makes you look good.
Well, it's that power of collaboration also.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, one thing that was interesting is that you did compose this film like during lockdown. So can you talk a little bit about what that process was like versus just how things would normally be?
Yeah, it felt like messy and spread out. Not messy in a dramatic way, just messy in a like, what scene is this? What did I write for that thing? Because there would be like months between. It was never like daily. And I feel like when I'm writing a piece of music daily, I can remember what's going on. And it felt like disorienting to just sort of write one thing, not hear whether it worked or not, have to move on to a different thing. And then she would call and talk about some theme or some idea, and you were kind of like, I don't remember what that is. And I feel like I'm falling down on the job by not knowing every single piece of music. And so it just sort of felt like spread out and stressful. in that way. But I think that's how she works, is that she just like produces a lot of stuff and then kind of collages it together. And you just have to sort of be okay with it and sort of go like, oh, she's not expecting me to know like everything in the same way that she doesn't know it. And it's like layers that you put down this layer and then you're adding flutes to that layer and you're adding clarinets or whatever it is. So yeah, that was sort of how I worked on it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little chaotic how like a lot of artistic endeavors are,
Yeah.
but it felt really like there was a cohesiveness to the whole thing. It felt like there was a theme, even if maybe there wasn't, but it was building, and then by the time we got to when she's actually wearing that dress, oh my God, it gave me like the hair, it gave me chills.
Yeah,
It was really beautiful.
Yeah, a little bit of a like disclaimer. She got really great syncs, and she's just fearless in the way of like, she really likes Slow Dive, this band, and she just emailed the lead singer and the songwriter of that to be like, I love your music, I have this movie, can I send you a cut of it? And she wouldn't know this, but he happened to want to get into film. And so he was like, yeah, you could totally license it, and like, I'd love to do anything you're working on. Like, just, I feel like for me, there was, at the beginning of my career, there was so much anxiety about like calling a musician to play on a score. Like, they're gonna be too busy, they're not gonna wanna do, I mean, nobody, you know. But she really was an example of like, yeah, let me email Beach House and just, you know, I don't have any money. I think maybe the licenses were like very cheap, like $1,000, maybe $2,000, which is very low for feature films. But she was just like, I'll just ask. But the film was great. And so I think any of those artists, if they saw the film, were like, yeah, the money doesn't matter, I just want to be part of this. And so I think when she puts on the dress, that's Colin Stetson, and he's an incredible saxophone player. And so, yeah, like that was that piece of music, which is just like exhilarating and exuberant. So nice, after so much mystery and so much kind of stress and like sadness and loneliness, to have that be the thing where she's finally in the dress is like a great moment.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about just sort of your trajectory. I know you grew up in Winnipeg, right? Mm-hmm. You eventually ended up, I know you were at USC for a while, but just talk about kind of your trajectory and like when you realized you wanted to be a film composer.
Yeah. I wanted to be a jazz musician in Winnipeg, and studied with a musician in Winnipeg who said I should go to Toronto, so I went to Toronto. And then after doing jazz music for a long time, a teacher there was like, you should go to the States, you should go to Louisville, Kentucky, there's a graduate degree program there, so I went there. I had to go back because of the visa, so I went back, but in that time kind of realized that I didn't really love playing jazz as much as I thought I would, in part because I just found it like a very hard music to play and just felt like I was not good at it. And I think you have to have a lot of faith in yourself to continue being a jazz musician. And I just was like ready to quit. And around that time, I was at home in Winnipeg on a break or something, and the IFC channel was on, and this movie called Happy Accidents was on it. And all I heard was this like flute, kind of a weird vibraphone, like the score was different. And I was in the kitchen and I sort of came out to see what it was, and then watched the rest of the movie, loved it, found the movie, watched the whole thing. And it was the first time that I thought a score, that I had seen or experienced a movie where the score wasn't like a big John Williams orchestral, overwhelming virtuosic bit of composition. And so after that, started looking for opportunities, went back to Toronto, and a friend of mine had studied with this composer named Jim McGraw, who is a Canadian composer, is a Canadian composer, and he did the music for Degrassi. It's a huge Canadian show, but I think it's gotten to the States as well. Yeah, it was the Drake show, where Drake was in a wheelchair.
Drake.
Kind of weird, yeah, Drake. And so I emailed him and asked if I could come and just like observe. Again, like shaking, should I say I'm a nobody, you know? And he was like, yeah, come. And I had these questions, and I asked him these questions, and he was like, kind of amused that I would be so like journalistic about just like wanting to know how he did whatever. And then at the end of it, this guitar player walked in because how he scored Degrassi was that he would write these themes but have an instrumentalist come in, not a big orchestra, just one guitar player. And that was enough to make the score kind of come alive, where a lot of times on these low budget things, you can't afford to hire many musicians. You can do samples, and then you can like, I don't know, maybe just that. But it was like an idea for me that finding a partner to collaborate with would make the process less overwhelming. And so he was like, you have to go to Los Angeles. And I don't know if you know this, maybe like some of the immigrants in the audience will know, like it's incredibly hard to get to the United States, and a lot of people want to get here. And I ended up applying for a grant from the Canada Council and then applied to USC, not wanting to take on student debt, but it was the only way to spend any time in the United States. And then those things came through. I went to Los Angeles, went to USC. And then from there, kind of kept my eye out and happened to meet Sam. He was in the class, and he was the only other person who had like loved The Shining or liked these other films, where a lot of the class was really into like Marvel movies or like this more of a kind of like Hollywood A-list type of film score. And we both really like agreed on the value of scores being intimate and smaller ensemble. And so we started playing on each other's scores, and then and then I think that made it sound different enough for young filmmakers to hire us. Super cheap again, but also that we were doing something that was like a little bit live music, and I think that made a difference. And then from there, we, just like connected with anyone, like went to all those awkward mixers, all the like film festivals, terrible film festivals like Hollywood Shorts Fest or whatever, and just met people and said like, anytime you want free music, you got it. And then eventually an editor, an assistant editor, put some of our music in a feature film that was directed by, I don't know if you know Simon Helberg, he was on The Big Bang Theory, but his wife, Jocelyn Town, she directed a movie that was like one of the first independent movies to raise like over $100,000 on Kickstarter. And they, of course, didn't have any money for a composer. And so so the assistant editor put some music in a place, she liked it, and we were like, whatever you want, whatever your budget is, whatever. And thankfully, they hired us. That movie went to a film festival. Those producers made another movie with another director, and just like from there, it wasn't like constant, it was like years and a lot of like uncertainty. But eventually and also Sam's mom went for walks with a lady whose neighbor is a film composing agent. And so, it was just like those things where someone gives you a number and is like, call them, and you think, I shouldn't call this, I'm nobody, but I'm gonna do it even though I feel stupid. And then they say, come by the office, and we went. Maybe I was thinking like, finally got an agent, didn't even have to work that hard. And of course they were like, no, we can't take you on, you've done nothing, there's nothing we can do for each other. But keep in touch, send an email anytime you have anything. You might think it's nothing, send it. And we didn't. We waited until we had like 3 or 4 things in film festivals, sent them an email, and they were like, okay, I think we might be able to work with something. And I think we had an agent for 3 years before we got the call about Animal Kingdom. And then once we got the TV show, it was like real job. And but I think it was like 5-6 years of like not a lot.
Yeah, but it sounds like you really hustled and pushed through those awkward mixers and all that most people hate to do. You talked a lot about collaboration. Can you talk just a little bit more, and this will be a question, I'm gonna open up to the audience also for questions, but just talk a little bit further about collaboration in general, like how important it's been for you. Was it hard to begin collaborating? Is it something you were always open to? I mean, sometimes our egos get in the way when it comes to artistic, sort of creative things, I know, especially for editors, that that happens sometimes. But as you get older and get more experience, it kind of goes away. So can you just talk a little bit more about just collaboration and when it's meant to you and your career?
Totally. My first job in TV was with a CBC show called How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? It was like a reality show about finding the next Maria Von Trapp for a Canadian production of The Sound of Music. And you guys haven't heard of that show? Anyway, and I loved working on a team. Like I knew that film composers kind of work by themselves, but I was the music coordinator, which meant kind of being a go-between between the music director and the arranger that had to arrange I can't even remember, like whatever songs were available for licensing that they had to then give to these girls to sing. Women, they were like teenagers. But yeah, I just like loved the hustle of it. I loved that I was working all day, and that there was like cameras and people were watching it. Like my parents could watch it after playing so many jazz gigs where like my parents were great. My mom's here from Canada. But yeah, you want like people, you want your friends to come to the thing that you wrote, which is like, you guys, thank you for being here. I'm so happy to have friends here seeing the work that I've done. But I love that collaboration and I was looking for that for a long time. So I feel like I just knew. There was like a couple times when I wrote a song. There was one time when I wrote a song for a movie and I thought it was like the best thing I've ever done. And it probably was, but it just wasn't good enough. Like it just didn't make it. Whatever, for whatever reason, and it's okay, but it was painful to sort of recognize that. But I also saw that when I was like sharp with the director, like our relationship changed. And that sucked. I mean, I worked with her again, it was fine, but I just sort of saw that I kind of went too far in taking it personally. And then after that was like, oh, it's not worth it. And also, yeah, like I kind of have a lot to learn, but you feel like you need to know everything, and I think that can make you kind of front a bit. But working with directors where when you followed their direction, when you revised, even like 10, 16 revisions, whatever, it was better. Like that was how I learned and got better. And so after enough experiences like that, you're just kind of like, oh, this is like a built-in mentorship where they're saying like, keep going. And you know that you still have a chance. Like when they don't ask you to revise it is when you're kind of in trouble. And so, yeah, so now I kind of feel like, oh, I benefit a lot from collaborating, and like, it's better for me to like see what I'm not seeing than live in this like, I know everything, or like what I have is somehow sacred or whatever, it's not.
Does anyone have any questions for Alexis?
You can
or yell it.
whatever you want.
If we can't hear you, you gotta come.
Okay, perfect. My name is Carmen, and I'm also a film composer. And so
nice.
It's really great to see you, and really loved your work on this film. I wanted to ask, because I thought for a second that I heard the Colin Stetson sample, and I recognized there being quite a bit of pre-recorded music in the film. Cupid Shuffle obviously being kind of the outlier in terms of the palette.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, were there conversations with you and the director, and you discussed being a music coordinator as well, did you have a say in which pre-recorded music was used, and were you asked to match and or blend the palette? Because sometimes it was hard to tell, like Colin Stetson moment, it's like, oh, she brought in the saxophone, she waited, you know, and then I was like, I think I recognize this, but it was such a beautiful placement, similar to like Nature of Daylight when you see in Shutter Island or Arrival, where it's where it just matched the moment. The director loved it, the music coordinator and composer felt it suited the vision well. So I'm just curious about your process in terms of, it was just very seamless. The music felt it all could have come from the same band or the same person.
Yeah.
So,
Right on. Yeah. When I first watched it, a lot of those syncs were in there, and she was hopeful. Like she didn't get the permission yet, but she was hopeful that it would work. I found them really inspiring. I mean, like I was jealous because it sounds good, and with the Flow song, I was like terrified. Like, do you want that? Like, am I supposed to produce something like that? Like, I can't. I just will never be able to produce something like that. That's as good as that. Everything else, I feel like it's kind of in the wheelhouse of like, I have the instruments, I know that vocabulary, I can do something like that. I don't remember, the end titles.
The temp music, was that all temp? Were those part of the temp music that was placed in the film then?
Yeah, it was part of the temp, and basically like everything was like, if we can't get it, can you replace it with a similar thing? Okay. And I'm like pretty used to like And it can kind of mess with you a little bit to go like, oh, I'm just doing like the poor man's Colin Stetson. I don't like that. I want to do like the rich girl Alexis or whatever. But then you're like, yeah, you just kind of, at a certain point, you're like, oh, I'm just like kind of scared. And there have been people that have been like, okay, so End Titles was Cat Powers. It was from Sun, I can't remember. It was like, You Got Nothing But Time, that song. Really, really great song. And it was like perfect. The shot of the shadow of her driving comes out perfect. And it went to the festival like that. But then when they got a distribution deal, Cat Power, bless her, was like, pay me. And they were like, we can't. And so Morrisa was like, do you have anything? And it kind of happened to be at a time when I was like, wanted to do more of my own stuff as Diane, but I only had these wisps of ideas and not a lot of self-confidence. And so I sent her the Dark Streets, like, I wasn't happy with it, but she was like, this is great, do that, like, just produce it. And yeah, and then I was like, I'm gonna put saxophone in that because I loved the way Colin's saxophone sounded in the score. I'm copying him. I am doing the poor man's Colin Stetson and I'm putting it into my song and like, but I want to. And then like, yeah, and Morrisa and I have talked about that because there's so many shots in the film that are like direct copies from Criterion movies or whatever, but you kind of like collage it together and then go like, yeah, it was inspired by that thing. And I hope no one like grabs my arm and is like, I know what you did. Because I'll be like, I did, I'm not original, I'm just trying to get through the movie. But yeah, basically that was it. And then like, thankfully all of those artists were like, that's great, because I don't want to replace them, they sound great. And I think they make the movie so much brighter because there's so much sadness and so much mystery. Having these like really bright, grooving songs just like infuses it with energy. So on one hand, like, yeah, I'd love to do every possible piece of music in this movie and take all the credit, but it's better when there's like a lot of different music in there. I just think it's a better movie for it.
Yeah. Do you mind if I branch on to that?
Sure.
With the idea that it seemed almost simultaneously documentary and narrative, it's kind of riding the line. And with film scoring, sometimes you're told not to tell the audience what to think, and then sometimes it's like create that anticipation, build up that suspense. And I'm wondering, there was a lot of pensive, reflective moments where you're trying to be in the mind, it seems, of the main character rather than trying to figure out what's next, trying to, you know, and you talked about that. And so I'm wondering how that affected your process of, you're saying that, you know, you think it's gonna go somewhere and then the music reflects kind of this, that it's waves, it's not one big climax and fall. It's kind of like so I wonder about that.
Yeah. And sorry, this woman was asking about the syncs, the songs in the movie. Folks at the back might not have heard that, but she asked about syncs in the movie. You might have gathered that by my answer. And then the next question was about how the score is really pensive and doesn't really have like peaks or like building a lot of tension. It really is just sort of like sitting in the scene, I think is what you're saying. And that was really intentional, and I find it really hard to do that because you feel like this obligation to move things along. But Morrisa really wanted it to be like, let's just observe without, like we do have this kind of like expectation with movies that there's gonna be like action and like follow this story structure. But for her, I think she just wanted it to be very quiet. And so a lot of it was like, we would give her a busy cue and she would just take out elements and be like, that's enough. And that's like very hard because you just feel like you have to do so much because otherwise, what am I doing? I'm just playing like 2 notes here, that's it? Don't pay me for this. But it is like a whole concept and the whole like, yeah, what you're thinking through and how you're like applying it to the movie, that's the work. It's not necessarily that the music is amazing and like virtuosic.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, hi. So, first off, I'm not a composer. So I don't think I can follow up that good of a question as those, but For the scene, over halfway through, Lily Gladstone's character is driving, and there's like music being played, and it's also mixed with these elements of like news reports and things going on. Did you have any say into that? And also for someone who's like never like, and if there's any filmmakers who have never worked with a composer before, what advice would you give to them for like them first time approaching somebody to compose music for them?
Yeah. Watching it this time around, it was like, oh, the news radio is just like sound design noise. Like I remember in 2020, everything was so stressful, and so you're sort of listening to these like news reports to be like, is there judgment on what's going on? Like, is there validation of my own worldview? Is there blah? And she really just like, there's such a just all this stuff that's just like snippets of things, and so it doesn't really piece together any kind of narrative or story to me anyway. And then it just becomes about like kind of thinking about how much noise we hear about the state of our nation and how much anxiety and like how we just kind of keep going, even though this is constantly a part of it. And I didn't have any say. I loved the use of the radio. I thought it was so great, and I'm so glad she was deciding it, because I would have been like super biased, you know. But she's so good about just being like what parents said, that like you never know what someone is going through, and so she just has this curiosity. Like she's a documentary filmmaker. She's just curious about like, you tell me, like let me just portray this as neutrally as possible. And so yeah, that's about the radio, and I loved it. She also had this project as a conceptual artist called MoPhones, which was, she made these iPhone cases that she stuck like plastic grapes and bananas to, and so you would hold the like plastic grapes and put your phone in there, like this very clunky iPhone case. But with that, she had this like booth that you could go into and send a message to someone that you know is not going to hear it, but you want to say something to them. And I think it's like that idea that kind of like never really went anywhere. She brought into the movie as like just extra noise, extra kind of sounds that you can kind of take any way that you want to, really. And then advice for talking to a filmmaker, like I just feel like everyone wants to score a film. You're going to get a yes. I mean, you know, I like, at least like if you're talking to like local, you know, I mean, I don't know, John Williams is like probably busy, tired, I don't know. But for the most part, like just, it's the same thing, like just email and call or ask, and like most likely you'll get like really great collaboration, and people that are just like so excited, because making movies is amazing and working with filmmakers is amazing. And yeah, that's my advice.
All right, thank you.
We have time for one more question in the back.
I just wanted to say that I think you did a great job with making some really cold sounding music that really matched that, really made you feel the barrenness of that winter landscape she was driving through. And then there were also times I thought where you achieved that magic of the music is there, but you don't even notice it until you're so involved in what's going on in the life of the actor that music just kind of is there and you don't even realize it. It's almost like you're getting paid to be invisible, but it brings so much to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we do one more? I saw my friend Carrie had a question. Carrie, what's your question?
Well, first, I loved it.
Thank you.
Second, I'm curious how you interpreted the title of the film and how that played into the first one.
Yeah, I love the title of this movie, and I feel like I loved watching it because I think, not to be patronizing, but I think representation matters so much, and there's so much of this movie where like I feel like I see people that I don't know what their life is like. I have my assumptions, I have my like biases or whatever, and I love that she did these documentaries. So there's only 3 actors in the movie. It was Richard, the guy with the cowboy hat, the grandpa or the uncle, and then Ray, who's the Korean man at the end. So charming, I love him in anything he does. And then, yeah, Lily Gladstone. But the rest were just people that she met. And I felt like I just loved her courage to go up to strangers and say like, hey, can we shoot you? Can we put you in this movie? Can I actually like come to your house and shoot you before your shift at 6 in the morning or whatever? And like how willing people are to talk about their experience and how fascinating it is. And it's just like, it's actually so generous to like let her in. And I feel like that's, to me, that was like the unknown country, the mystery of how we live in America, and it's can be so dark and so stressful, but then it can be full of connection and wonder and diversity and magic of the different landscapes. And that like ultimately we all kind of keep going in faith that like America is ultimately a great country that's incredibly complex. And I feel like she did this in a way that wasn't like picking sides or talking about ideology, but just focusing on people. And I feel like that's the unknown country, is that we're all like doing our best and we forget about it so easily.
I do have one last question. Do you have, well, that was beautiful. We should end on that, but I do want to know if you have any words of wisdom, advice, anything to say to would-be composers that might be in the audience.
Yeah, just like you're doing all the right things. Like if you can score for free, filmmakers really like, it's so hard to make movies, so hard to get things produced. It's so expensive. And so if you're just starting out, it's okay to do it I think, without being compensated. That I felt like there was a lot of like, I'm not doing the right thing, I'm not valuing my work, I'm not like whatever, but I just think when you're getting started, it's okay to like share that. Don't give it away in the contract, like keep your music. But it's okay to like do things for free for the sake of the relationship and for the sake of building it up. And I think a lot of my heroes anyway started out just like being curious about what could happen when you just like do the work and have faith that like you'll find a way to make it happen. And I found that like filmmakers generally, like when they have money, will pay you what they can, and they're like pretty generous and fair about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, she works all over, but how cool is it that she calls Cincinnati home?
Woo!
Thank you so much. Thank you.